If you don't believe in this, you're not going to put in the work. If you don't put in the work, you're not going to get the results. But at the same time, I don't blame anyone for not believing in this, because you're just constantly lied to. You're lied to in the mass communications via marketing. And then you're lied to when you walk in the door, either inadvertently because the person doesn't know any better, or intentionally because the person is trying to get something out of you. And it's just created so much hesitation and fear in this screwed up industry. And it doesn't need to be that way. We're here with Maxine Lisot today. Maxine is a coach at Starting Strength Plano. I don't know Maxine well, but I know the type of person that she is just based on how she operates. And I like the type of person that Maxine is, and I think you will too. So I thought we'd have her on the show today to talk about her mindset and how and why she's able to perform at the level that she does. And just to give you an example of what I'm talking about here, how long did it take you to go through the prep course, Maxine?
I finished it in under 4 months.
So she went through the coach prep course, which I think is like a 9-month program typically. In about so how many modules are there?
What did I say, about 20 or
20
so?
something
It's been a
modules.
while since
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
finished it.
So I think it's like we're targeting 6 months. It takes most people longer than that. You know, a module a week is a good pace. And then you just banged it out in 4 months. And we recognized her at the coaches conference year before last, which was well deserved. And then I got to know just a little bit about Maxine's background. And then I found out that she used to be a wrestler. And I don't know if you guys know wrestlers, but wrestlers are a different breed. So when it comes to grit and drive, it certainly applies to all things in life. And I'm a proponent of doing things that are difficult that help you build psychological fortitude to accomplish amazing things. So Maxine is well on her way to becoming a starting strength coach. Talk to us, Maxine. So why is it that or I guess how is it that you got through that prep course in 4 months when people take twice as long to do it? What is your goal? What's your mindset? Tell us about how you approach that.
I mean, even when I started the prep course, it's always been where to me classroom work's easy. I knew coaching experience was where I needed to dedicate it the most time. So I didn't want to waste time going through the prep course. And I'm not saying I was, lackadaisical in my effort towards it, but to me, it's like, hey, let's get this prep course done and then go out there and actually apply myself. And that's where I had the opportunity to interact and contact Brent Carter, start at Starting Strength Plano, because they opened back in April 2021. And I mean, that's where I've had the most growth, honestly. Not to say the prep course doesn't give you experience and knowledge, but it's been oh my gosh, almost 2 years now, being at that gym, working with different SSCs and multiple clients over the past 2 years.
Yeah. I think that point you just made reinforces the idea that you can have all the theoretical understanding in the world, but you don't really know something until you have practical experience. And this is a fact that a lot of academics miss, unfortunately. But we do our best to combine the theory with the practice here, because both are necessary. We have to have a model in our mind. We have to have an idea of what we're doing, an ideal that we're trying to achieve. And then we have to be able to achieve that in the real world with real members, and we have to be able to do that consistently. Otherwise, we can't call ourselves strength coaches. So, Maxine, you blazed through the prep course, and now you're gaining a whole bunch of practical experience. Tell us what happens next in your pursuit of the SSC.
Well, I mean, to be honest, my goal is to attempt the platform a second time coming up in June. And I say that because last year I'd been interning for over a year, went and did my platform exam, and out of 11 applicants, only 4 passed.
Right.
And I was one of them, straight up. Like it's hard. And I mean, rip us apart.
Yeah.
you know?
It's intimidating too, isn't it?
I mean, he yelled at me because I was being too loud, and I'm like, "Ah."
Because you're being too
But
loud.
that's always been my problem as a coach, whether I'm coaching wrestling or martial arts.
Dang. Yeah,
It's
that's a
more
first.
intentionality,
I
right?
thought for sure you misspoke and said that you're being too quiet because that's typically the feedback that we get. Too loud. That's a
No,
new one. Damn.
we'll go with volume control. How about
Volume
that?
control. Okay. Got it.
It definitely was like I went in opting the first time on purpose because it's the same thing. Classroom setting, super safe. When you don't opt in, it's still safe. And just from being a competitor for so long in my life, I had to go through the fire and go under the pressure of it. And of course, I failed. And I'm like, okay, this is how it feels, and this is how it feels at the end to fail. So let's not repeat that. So definitely going in now a second time. I've already paid and registered for the June seminar. Is kind of learning to control my anxiety, control my volume, but more importantly, like prioritize what I'm seeing and correct it timely. That was the biggest thing. And, mentor coaches I've worked with, they'll say, you can see these mistakes, but it's the timing. And of course, if you don't have good timing, you can't correct it, no matter how much you tell the client afterwards.
What is the most useful thing in your life that you've found that helps you control your anxiety?
Uh, Reminding myself I've survived very hard things in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I start to notice those feelings replicate, I'm like, well, I've felt it before in this situation. And since the current moment I'm in is way less bad, I will find a solution and I'll find a way through it.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. And for me, it's been martial arts that's helped me simulate those experiences because if you're drowning and you feel like your well-being is in danger because you're getting tired and there's someone who's less tired that's continuing to attack you, and you can still keep your head straight and breathe and make it through and do that over and over and over again, and then come out on the other side and know that things are still okay. When it comes time to speak in front of a group of people or do things that are otherwise stressful, it's kind of like, yeah, I feel nervous, but in comparison, I know that I can do a whole lot more than this, and I've proven it to myself that I can, and that gives me confidence to proceed through most of life's tough challenges. And then, of course, the lessons we learned under the barbell. Is it similar for you?
Oh, yeah, because unless you do something difficult like a combat sport, the next harder thing is going to be barbell training.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like I absolutely love wrestling, I love martial arts, but the majority of the clients at starting strength gyms, that they're never going to have the opportunity to expose themselves to that. So the next hardest thing that people can do is get under a barbell.
Yep.
And I didn't even get to touch a barbell till I was 19 years old, but it was through starting strength. I read the first edition book way back in 2007.
Oh, no shit.
So yeah, I mean, it was one of those where, this guy named Rip wrote this book, the Black Book, and my boyfriend gave it to me and said, hey, if you want to learn to barbell train, then read this book. And so it's like I've always known nothing else. And even though I'd go to the dark side and try CrossFit or whatever, I was like, yeah, I'm going to veer back to starting strength. And, I'd repeat my NLP after a big layoff or a big injury. And I'm like, this actually works. And, my game changer in my competitive career was barbell training.
Tell me about that. I want to hear about your wrestling background. Just as anything you want to share that's interesting. And then I'd also like to hear about how strength training helped your martial arts.
Sure. And I mean, just as a quick background on me, I currently coach wrestling, girls wrestling, but when I was in high school, girls wrestling didn't exist at my school. So I actually had to go into karate and go into judo and other sports. And what happened was, I'm 5'1.5" or 5'1 3/4", on a good day. And I was just always the smallest, weakest one. And, I was out of shape. And even though I was really tough and aggressive, I just couldn't overcome the deficit of my, lack of experience and inability to get inside the gap. But pretty much when I was 19 years old and I started barbell training with starting strength, within 6 months, I was dropping girls with body shots. Girls knew I hit hard even though at the time I was walking at 125 pounds, and I was also having to cut weight. And it was just one of those, people didn't understand why I got faster, why I got more explosive. And this was at a time when barbell training was really frowned upon in the martial arts community, where I literally had a sensei ask me, who's now an Olympic coach, he's like, how does barbell training make you stronger? And I'm like, I mean, how do I even begin? And what was funny was, once the guys that I trained with started barbell training and they saw results, then it was embraced.
Yeah.
So to me, it was kind of ironic that, women can see such an improvement in their strength levels when they start barbell training, but then you take a guy who may already be strong, put him on a barbell, and then there's even more exponential improvements. And that's kind of been my toss up throughout life, is it's like, I'm trying to balance all of my technical practice with the barbell training. And unfortunately, one may give way to the other, where flat out, some of my failures came from training too much versus practicing. And that's going with the 2-factor model.
Sure.
Which I hope people listening to this know about.
Yeah, we'll link to that in the show notes so everyone can read the 2-factor model of sports performance, which is a really good insight. And Ripito puts it beautifully. It essentially states that if you are an athlete, you need to train your body to learn movement patterns. And you do that by practicing the movement patterns. And so you practice your sport. And then in addition to that, you ought to optimize your structural changes. And you can do that by getting stronger and adding weight to the bar over time. So if your human machine can produce more force through the range of motion that you've practiced efficiently, you will become more powerful. You will be more capable. You will be more explosive, especially if you're also training power. And then there's the metabolic stuff you can mess with too, right? You can improve your conditioning further than is necessary or is caused by the practice that you perform in the gym, if necessary. And that kind of is sport dependent. That's a really good insight. And I wish I had things laid out to me that clearly early on when I started martial arts around 20 years ago. And I remember when I started Muay Thai and I was learning how to kick, how pathetic my strikes were. I wasn't hurting anybody. No one's getting hurt by me touching them, right? And then at the same time, I'm seeing these guys smashing the pads where their shins are getting red. It sounds like a gunshot going off every time they kick, roundhouse kick the Thai pads. And I'm like, I need to get there. And I practiced for years and years and years and years and years. I never got there. Didn't matter how much I practiced until I did starting strength. And then, so I was, kind of 160, 170 growing up, 6'2", training Muay Thai, not intimidating, not effective, decent skills. And then did the program, got up to 230, ended up fighting at 200. And at 200, my striking coach is the same striking coach as a former UFC champion whom I won't mention, but he's a middleweight. I don't want to shame the poor guy. But I kick harder than he does. So my technique plus starting strength means that I kick harder than a world champion fighter. So that's kind of cool.
Well, and it's funny to me because I've noticed grappling sports, they'll embrace barbell training way more readily than striking sports, because you put your hands on somebody and you can feel, oh crap, like this person's strong, and no amount of technical superiority can help.
Yes.
And I see it all the time in girl wrestling, where it's like, I'll be coaching a girl, and this girl of mine, she's pretty technical, but she goes against somebody who's just flat out stronger than her. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be a fight, and it just takes like one throw to get slammed and pinned. And I'm like, well, you should have squatted more, like.
Do me a favor, Maxine, if you see our BJJ case study come out and it gets you fired up, call me, because I just watched a draft of it and it's so fucking cool. We took this black belt named Eric, who trains, or I should say practices, at our local jiu-jitsu gym owned by my buddy who's a black belt world champion. And Eric's kind of like a chill California, relaxed black belt, kind of open guard player. And he's getting smushed by a high-level 16-year-old blue belt competitor. Don't get me wrong, he's one of the best blue belts in the world, but he's a black belt, right? So we put him through the program for 8 months, And then we did an interview with him, with the blue belt, and with Andrew, the world champion. And I won't give any spoilers, but it's a hell of a video. And it just reinforces the point that you just made, that you can't pretend that strength isn't important, and you can do some magic that's going to overcome physics. Physics are about leverage and force. So jiu-jitsu teaches you the leverage, and starting strength helps you produce the force. Ignore one at your own peril, right? And it does work in all martial arts, as delusional as some coaches want to remain. That's no problem. For example, I was looking for someone to hold pads for me when I was living in California. So I called 24-Hour Fitness nearby, and I go, hey, is it cool if I come down there with a pad holder and just hit some pads at your gym? And the guy goes, pads for what? I was like, Muay Thai. He's like, oh, I'll hold pads for you. I was like, the guy that answered the phone at 24-Hour Fitness is like, oh, do you do Muay Thai? He's like, oh yeah, I'm a state champion. I was like, oh shit, cool. So I meet up with the guy. We go train at 24-Hour Fitness. He's holding pads for me. And he's just like, I kick the pads and his eyes are like, oh, like, holy shit. And he's asking me. And I said, dude, don't listen to any of these idiots. I'm telling you from personal experience, you need to lift heavy weights and add 5 pounds of workout. And keep in mind, this guy's a personal trainer at 24-Hour Fitness, right? So then I provide him with starting strength coaching for free while he's holding pads for me. And I watched one of his fights before I started coaching him. And he's fighting at like 135 or 140 or something. He's a little guy, right? And he's standing in the pocket, and it's more like choreography or ballet or something. These guys they're not afraid of each other. When I'm in a fight, I come in, I strike, and then I get out of range. I don't want to sit there and engage in a firefight. I value my brain more than that. But these guys are just sitting in the pocket, cracking each other, and no one's getting hurt. So it's like, is this fighting? And then I saw one of his later fights, and mind you, we only got his deadlift to like 240 or something. But when he kicks people, it sends a message, and they want to back away from him. And all of a sudden he's dominated and chasing and hurting people. It's like, well, that's the idea. So now you can do what your intent is in martial arts, because you've got some power behind your movements,
Yeah, and I mean that buy-in is so crucial. Whether you're doing martial arts or even, I'm coaching at the Plano gym, and it's just a mom, and she has a hard time squatting to death, and the buy-in for her is, oh, well, I can pick up my kids more easily now. People sometimes need evidence just plowed through their face, literally or figuratively,
No doubt. Yeah. And that's one of the nice things about what we do, is it's purely demonstrable. It's like, if your back hurts, give me 2.5 weeks, man. Give me 2. If it's not working, you can have your money back. If it's working, you're going to want to keep, you're not going to quit, obviously. You did mention motherhood. You're a mom too, aren't you?
Yes. I have a 3.5-year-old going on 16.
Yeah, my niece is 4. That's an interesting age. They're fun. They say wild stuff.
Well, and it's funny because, I've been trying to weightlift around her as much as possible. So she'll go up and try to grab a barbell, and she'll squat. And at one point she knew how to press and deadlift. And it's one of those things you just got to normalize around kids. You got to normalize around moms. You have to normalize it around everybody for them to even start buying in.
So you had already gone through the process of getting stronger prior to becoming a mother, right?
So yeah, when I first started barbell training, I was 19 years old. And of course, like anytime I deviate and get injured or have a long layoff, I'd go back to NLP. But quite honestly, I was probably like a early intermediate. And then when I had to literally start over once I had my daughter, and at that point I had sciatica, I had 2 bulging discs. I couldn't even really squat the bar pain-free, and I was having to do bench press off the floor because, of course, during COVID, it was just hard to find stuff. And I got up to a lot of my pre-baby strengths in under, 3 or 4 months. Damn. Where by the time I maxed out my NLP, I was like, oh, I actually really need a coach now. And so I use Nick D'Agostino for my programming, which he's fantastic just because he knows I'm a train wreck of injuries. And just, it was so surprising at my body remembering the strength. Because, they talk about it where it's easier to get strong the second time or third time through because your body remembers. And, I remember at one point when I was 135 pounds, 245 for a squat was my 1 rep max. And since then I've been able to add 20 to 30 pounds because I've allowed my body to grow. But it's just still like I can still do this stuff, and it's just mind blowing, like what your, nervous system can remember.
What's your body weight now?
So I'm walking at like 150, 149. I'm actually going to be doing the strength lifting meet at Wichita Falls in May. So I'm trying to get to 145 just so I can comfortably eat that day.
Nice.
But I mean, to put it in historical context, like when I competed in martial arts, my weight class was 121 pounds, and I usually walked at like 130. And then I went through a crazy stint of trying to compete at 110 pounds. So it's like a lot of my life has all been about being told I need to get smaller. I need to get smaller. I need to be as light as possible. And it's nice now because, I've been able to coach wrestling. I'm kind of dappering in Brazilian jiu-jitsu and weightlifting where it's like, oh, you're actually rewarded for being bigger and stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been huge for my mental health. That's for sure.
There's a bunch of stuff I want to do with this company, and some of it has to do with changing pop culture. And one of the things I would love to change about pop culture, especially now that I have a daughter, is just changing the message that it's all about being light and lean. It just misses the point. It just misses the point. The people that say that don't understand that muscle mass is a variable that you can change significantly. And body weight is not that relevant a metric because it combines two very disparate metrics, body fat and lean body mass. And so, the message that I'm going to raise my daughter with is the weight on the scale should match the objective that you're trying to achieve. And the lean body mass number is the important part. And then the body fat percentage can be dialed up or down depending on needs and goals. But, being too lean isn't a virtue. I don't see the value in being too lean. Anytime I get too lean, my back starts to hurt, my joints start to hurt. So that's one thing I'd really like to change. It must have been interesting for you growing up in that era in martial arts. I know that Misha Tate, for example, she's a former UFC bantamweight women's champion at 135. She grew up wrestling, and just like you, she didn't have the opportunity to wrestle with girls, so she wrestled with the boys. And she is a tough lady. That is a tough lady. You can see the wars she's been through and see her grit and her tenacity. It's incredible. And wrestling has the ability to build that. And I think it's great that you are a wrestler and that you're teaching wrestling as well. And speaking of which, if you ever want to come down to Boise, we could use some wrestling instruction at our jiu-jitsu school. So cruise over sometime and we'll train together. And then you can teach us jiu-jitsu guys some wrestling too. So when you go for the strength lifting meet in Wichita Falls, what numbers will you be happy with? What are your goals for your lifts that day?
I want to be able to actually hit a 300-pound squat just because I remember last time, it was like a year and a half ago, I did 275. Everyone was like, that's way too fast. 300's coming. And then for deadlift, I got to be able to deadlift more than I squat, else I'll never hear the end of it from Rip and all the other coaches. And then with my press, just because my press is so sensitive to my stress and recovery, as long as I stay over 100 pounds, I'll be happy. And it's kind of one of those, if you spoke to me like 5-10 years ago, I'd be way more competitive and egotistical with the numbers. And I'll admit, I guess I've been humbled enough now where I'm like, hey, if I reach this particular goal, if I'm healthy during the process, then, I'll be satisfied. The four of us that are going to compete for Plano, we got to at least like step up and do our best. So.
Oh, yeah. By the way, your coach D'Agostino just had a kid himself. I saw a photo last week. Congrats to you, Nick. If you're watching.
He sent me a message, like a generic message to everybody. And then he's like, well, I can respond then. And I'm like, no, it's okay. I know you're not sleeping. It's okay.
Mm-hmm. And then I spoke to Michael Jones on the podcast. It strikes me that you guys have a really special culture there. So Brent Carter is the owner of 3, soon to be 4 gyms in Texas, 3 of which are in DFW. So you're at Plano, then there's Dallas right there off Greenville Avenue, then San Antonio, and then later Fort Worth. talking to Jordan on the podcast, talking to Michael on the podcast, these are guys that are really talented and they love what they do. And that is so evident when talking to them. What is it about the culture over there? Is Brent just fantastic at hiring and selecting people? Is he instilling certain values in you guys, or is it innate? What's the secret sauce there? How is it that you have such a special vibe amongst the gyms that I mentioned?
I mean, I think it's what I mentioned before with the buy-in, because, when I met Jordan and then I met Jones, he moved away and now he's come back to the great old state of Texas. It's like they are bought into the process. They're bought into the process as a trainee. They're bought into the process as a coach. They're bought into the process as being mentor coaches, where they know without exception that this methodology works. And it's hard because I've had an interaction with a lot of different coaches, and Brent just knows how to find people that are committed to that process. And that's kind of one of those things where some people will just innately hold on to it and some won't. And I've interacted with really good coaches who were in their own right, great at what they did, but the buy-in wasn't consistent or it wasn't there. And then at that point, it's hard. It's hard to stay connected to starting strength. Yep. They may be great coaches in other domains, sure, but people like Jones and people like Jordan, they wholeheartedly embody that process.
Tell me about your philosophy on coaching, or your style of coaching, or what you've learned about coaching. Anything you want to say about Maxine as a coach, because you not only coach barbells, but you coach wrestling and martial arts in general. So, and you're a thoughtful person, so I'm sure you have some ideas to share on what it means to be a coach, the importance of a coach. I'd like to hear whatever you want to share.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of my beliefs, and not trying to make it sound egotistical, but I guess it is a bit egocentric. Like, I coach the way that I wish I had been treated growing up, because I think of all the bad experiences I had where, I went from having a coach telling me you're too small to fight at this weight, which is what really pushed me to get as light as possible. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be that type of wrestling coach. So I'll frequently look at a girl and say, hey, you should probably move up a weight class. And then same thing, interacting at the Plano gym, I'll talk to these women they're pretty fearful with putting heavy weight on their back. And I tell them, like, hey, you've handled harder things in your life, like you're having to raise 2 kids and work full time. And so just learning to talk at their level while reinforcing this ideal that I wish I had as a coach really drives me forward. Where sometimes I get made fun of for being like the super positive, happy person at the gym coaching.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've noticed like some people really need that.
Yeah, sure.
Even though we like to complain about clients because, they don't pay attention to details. But a lot of our clients are actually super hard on themselves, where I would have a woman do, her 5 reps and be like, oh, I messed that up. And we're like, what are you talking about? Like the weight moved and you responded to corrections we gave you. And it's like, sometimes they need a little bit of positive reinforcement. We don't want them to think they're that good, because we want them to get better. But it's like people, again, they need that buy-in to believe that, hey, I can get better. But at the same time, my coaches support me. They believe in me. Mm-hmm. They actually want me here. Yep. Because I've met clients who act like they're not wanted at the gym. And Michael Jones is so good at his bad dad jokes, but it's like, that's what people look forward to when they come to the gym. They look forward to his philosophizing. They look forward to his comedy and his music. And so again, that buy-in and that culture, I like to do that too as a coach. And I see positive progress in people when they feel that every day.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of my female trainees are hard on themselves too, more so than men. One gal that I coach, she's middle-aged. She looks great. Her numbers are going up. She's a fantastic lifter. But the problem is, coaching is I'm nitpicking at you. I'm finding a little error that you need to work on, that you need to fix, because I want to make you perfect. And I might give you, 3 corrections within a 5-rep set. And they might be minor things, but the trainee is only hearing that she had 3 problems, and she might finish that set thinking that she's a failure. And so I tend to look at people's faces as I'm giving them cues, and then as they rack the bar to see how they feel about that last set. And if it's anything but triumphant, I make sure to let them know, like, hey, so what's the deal? Are you down on yourself? And then I just kind of clarify. Okay, so just so you know, you got all the important stuff totally correct. When I asked you to keep your chest extended at the bottom, that's just a minor thing. Your movement pattern's perfect. Your stance is great. Grip is great. And you're never going to be perfect at this, which is why you have a coach. So I just want you to keep that in mind, that you're 99% there. And then we're just going to work on that last 1%, but don't let the 1% overshadow the 99%. Right. And then I'm always sure to dole out compliments when due, always when earned. Right. But if someone's kicking ass and making good progress and is being super responsive, they need to hear about it, because I don't know, these 2020s got off to a real nasty start. And I think it's gutted a lot of people psychologically, and people are really seeking positive reinforcement and positive experiences, especially social experiences. And I know that those people thrive in our gyms because of the great people like yourself and Michael Jones and all of Brent's people that are there supporting and encouraging and helping.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I mean, what's nice though, it's like we're not just giving out a participation trophy.
Exactly.
It's like, hey, we're celebrating the fact that like somebody rack pulled, 250 pounds, and like 3, 4, 6 months ago, they couldn't even bend over and pick up the bar comfortably. So it's nice that, sure, we're giving this positive encouragement, but these people are definitely putting in the work for it.
So give me a couple of your favorite member stories. Do you have examples of people that have really benefited from this that are worth sharing?
I've mentioned her before in other podcast interviews, but Lalisa, she's our 85-plus-year-old client. She was started at Dallas, comes to Plano, and she's just somebody where she's a tough lady. Like she'll attempt things that people half her age will shy away from. She'll literally be swooning because she's tired, but she won't complain about it. And she's just somebody where you can start the training at any age and see a benefit. And, to me, I'm like, I wish my family members lifted. I wish my grandfather lifted. I wish my dad had lifted. I wish my mom would lift, because she understands the importance of it. She was brought in and bought into the process. There's also another girl we have. Her name's Kelsey. And I remember in her intro, she could not even squat her body weight. She had to have boxes and bands. And it was like, and it's hard because she was like she's a college age girl. She's like 19, 20 years old, and now you're seeing her squat well over 100 pounds and rack pulling a ton of weight. And that's just one of those where, wow, she's going to continue forth in life a hell of a lot stronger because she came in here. And what helped was her mom is a member. So when you get the importance, you have a daughter, it's like women will follow those that guide them for better or for worse. And so it's like with Kelsey, because her mom lifted, she felt that inclination to lift, and now she's seeing the results. And so who knows who Kelsey might influence down the road.
Hell yeah.
And it's the same thing for your daughter. She will one day influence other girls to do the same thing you're showing her.
You might think this is a lie, but my daughter's 2 months old right now, and she started squatting at 1 month. She was hanging off my shoulder, and then she extended her legs, and she was fully supporting her weight. And I was like, what in the hell? I didn't know that was possible. So I grabbed her by the armpits, and then she eventually just let go, and then just waited, and then she just stood back up.
I mean, it's an innate thing. And like, I look at videos of my daughter as a toddler, she has a hip drive.
Yeah, of course.
It's like, it's like, so imagine them growing up seeing that as a normal thing.
Yeah.
To me, that's huge.
Yeah. Lily
Like
did her first
that's
set of 5 last night. No shit. Sitting on the couch. My wife's getting some exercise in finally, now that she's, 2 months
yeah.
post birth, and then Lily and I are hanging out. She did her first set of 5. Took a few minutes, but she got it done.
There you go.
Are you coaching your wrestling team under the barbell as well?
So I'm an assistant coach, and so I don't have a lot of autonomy over the programming, but and that's always the conflict, because every head coach knows how to coach lifting,
Sure,
right?
sure, yeah.
And don't get me wrong, the head coach I work under at my school, he's a phenomenal wrestling coach. He's been involved in wrestling for over 50 years of his life.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just noticed you kind of have to chomp at it slowly, where it's like, hey, let's introduce the idea of like squatting with hip drive, or hey, let's show how to keep a straight bar path when pulling from a deadlift, or like raising the hips up.
Yep.
And so even though I haven't had an opportunity to implement programming per starting strength, at least the small technical changes I've been able to like gently, subtly incorporate.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I've got a couple complaints. I mean, overall, wrestling is such a positive, just because what it does to heart and your mind. It's incredible. Teaching young people how to grind like that is so useful. But shit, I hate the idea of having young people cut weight. And I love the message that you're sending of like, well, maybe going up a weight class is the way to go. And we can do that with muscle if you're willing to put some time in under the bar.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, and even like showing healthy ways to cut weight, because women's bodies and men's bodies, just like in barbell training, like they respond to weight changes differently. Where I've had to show girls like, actually, if you eat more and drink more water, you're going to drop the weight and weigh in correctly. And they're like, what? Like, I've been starving myself for 3 days. And I'm like, yeah, that's why you're wrestling like crap. And so it's guiding people in the right direction and making sure that they believe the process. And I feel like I'm being totally repetitive with it, but it's that buy-in, whether it's with nutrition, barbell training, it's like people have to be bought into it.
Yeah, that's a feature of the human operating system. The belief comes first. If you don't believe in this, you're not going to put in the work. If you don't put in the work, you're not going to get the results. But at the same time, I don't blame anyone for not believing in this, because you're just constantly lied to. You're lied to in the mass communications via marketing. And then you're lied to when you walk in the door, either inadvertently because the person doesn't know any better, or intentionally because the person is trying to get something out of you. And it's just created so much hesitation and fear in this screwed up industry. And it doesn't need to be that way. And that's why the numerical aspect of this is so important. And I should let you know, Maxine, that we have a new update coming to the websites. Been working on this for a long time, and we're moving into testing mode. And the new website is going to plug into our logbook. So we built a digital logbook system for the franchise right as a brand new company. Really risky move, extremely expensive. But we did this because we knew that we would be the only national fitness franchise that's able to quantify the progress of every single one of our members. So what could be more important than that, right? Huge differentiator. So this widget on the website is going to allow any visitor to punch in their age and their sex, and then it will tell the visitor how much stronger they can expect to get over time based on the average strength trainees of their peers of their same age and sex, which is kind of cool. And that's version 1. And then version 2 is we're actually working on a dashboard where you can open up any gym or any number of gyms or all the gyms, and then set your parameters. How long has the person been training? How many times per week on average had they been training? You can select your lifts. You can select a date range, and then it'll spit out a leaderboard of the strongest people per gym or per group of gyms or across the franchise. And then it'll also show how much stronger people in that cohort have gotten over time. So this is pretty exciting stuff, and I think it'll help. I think it will help with the buy-in, right? Because as long as someone like yourself, a coach in a gym, can explain to a training prospect that the weight on the bar, as the weight goes up, the structural changes you experience benefit you in every facet of your life, as long as that part can be agreed upon, then it's like, okay, so if that's the premise that we're building our logical chain off of, the next step in the chain is, well, how strong can you as an individual get? And don't listen to me just mentioning a bunch of numbers and, or referencing some one-off person training at the gym. Let me show you the averages. So I don't know. I think that's going to be useful. I was curious what you thought about that.
Oh, I totally agree because, we'll be coaching these clients and saying, hey, within a couple months, you'll probably move this much weight. And they're like, no, never. Like, I keep mentioning women just because women tend to talk to me more because I myself am a female coach. And, you have these women thinking, I can never deadlift the big plates at 135 pounds. And, Michael and I are kind of like, but it's where, unless they see other people do things that they don't know, and people don't like the unknown. They get scared of the unknown. They shy away from the unknown. And one thing I do appreciate about starting strength is that not only do we want strong lifters, we want intelligent lifters. We want people to understand their programming. We want people to an extent, understand the science. So, when we explain to certain clients like, hey, because you're in the geriatric population, this type of volume is probably going to be too much for you. We have to create certain variables, or showing women like, hey, you're actually still making progress, even though we switched to triples now. Mm-hmm. So definitely having a database where they can find someone just like them, that's going to be a huge game changer. Yeah. And the fact that it's way more accessible than trying to look at a, empirical study or, just go to, I don't know, whatever 24-hour fitness cohort they have, that's huge.
Yeah.
And you need that in the whole fitness industry.
Hell yeah. Well, hopefully it pays off. We'll see. It'll be live. The website will be live by the time this episode comes out. So I'm curious, are you still competing in martial arts?
So I retired from karate just because of all my obligations as a teacher and a coach, because I also teach AP biology because, yay teenagers. And it's like that itch is still there. And so I finally decided to try Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, even though I'll admit the whole guard thing kind of freaks me out because I'm like, why are you just sitting on your butt?
Yeah. Wait, we're fighting. So like, why would you lie down on your back? What the hell are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, and literally I try to take someone down and they just go straight into guard. And I'm like, it's so frustrating. But now that I'm actually trying and practicing and slowing myself down, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see where this is going.
Sure.
And if that opportunity ever comes up, it'd be awesome. But I also respect where I'm at now in my life as a mom, as a coach, as a person who likes to be able to have enough money to pay bills. So It's just, if that opportunity comes back, it would be a wonderful bonus, but it doesn't have to be a necessity to my identity now.
Right on. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I get the itch all the time. I'm not going to do any more martial arts competitions, too many miles, but I have to have the conversation in my head probably about once a week.
Yeah.
Are you a white belt then?
Oh yeah. And I'm totally okay with that.
Yeah. Good. And you're familiar with the follies of white belts and kind of what mistakes white belts typically make, especially ex-wrestlers, right? So I had a buddy who was a D1 wrestler going to a jiu-jitsu class, and he's one of these guys who's out of his mind. He has one speed, it's full blast 100% of the time, was a pro snowboarder, did flips and has countless concussions and just a complete knucklehead. And I go, look, man, you need to listen to me very carefully, okay? If you go into jiu-jitsu and you use the wrestling intensity, you're going to hurt yourself, you're going to hurt somebody else. So you need to go in there with humility, and you need to focus on learning the techniques that they're showing you and not fall back to what you already know, which is being aggressive and driving forward and dominating and controlling and taking down and all that stuff. Second session in, breaks 3 ribs. I tried to warn you, dude. I tried to warn you. So it's good that you're learning how to relax, and I think actually I'm a white belt too, and I hope I'm getting pretty close to graduating. But Delgadillo thinks I'm ready, but my coach is pretty hard on me, which is good. I think the key is to put yourself in the situations that are super uncomfortable, and then figure out how to survive. So it's like wrestlers need to spend lots of time on their back. And just if they're getting smashed and getting their guard passed, how do you recover? How do you stay alive? How do you prevent the submission? And then once you're kind of in blue belt territory and beyond, the wrestling experience really comes back in handy once you learn the jiu-jitsu stuff and you combine the two, and then you're real dangerous. So I'm looking forward to that for you. That'll be fun.
Yeah. And I'll admit too, it's like you mentioned the whole slowing down, and it's also knowing how to pull off of the accelerator for the strength aspect. Because,
Mm-hmm.
I would start rolling with some women, and I literally at one point did this double leg takedown and picked up this woman who probably weighed like 10 pounds more than me, and then like gently put her on the ground. I was like, oh, oops, and then I'll be wrestling these guys where they're pretty much almost choking me out, but I'm able to brace myself. And then I'm like, it's so hard because sometimes when you're really strong, it's a good compensation for technique. And then you have to like back off on that too. So that's probably the only problem with being strong. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
No, truly, truly. Yeah, like if an NFL athlete comes into the Gracie headquarters in LA and they've got a video on this, maybe we can link to it. It's kind of fun to watch. The advice is do not use your strength. We all know you could, throw me across the room. You're not going to learn jujitsu if you just pick me up and toss me on my head. Learn jujitsu and have the ability to do that, and then you're real dangerous, right? Are people blown away when they look at your height and then you grab a hold of them? Do they get a look in their eyes when they realize that they're going for a ride, or what?
I mean, I don't pay attention to it. I'll be honest. More people get that way with just when I tell them how much I weigh,
Mm,
because, I'm about 150 pounds, and people don't really have a good reference point for body weight and stuff. And then I have had it happen where I remember when I used to coach boys in wrestling and I demonstrate a move and they'd be like, wait, you're 150? And they look at their friend and be like, hey, you're 152 and she's stronger than you. And
damn
I'm
right I
like,
am.
I mean, and my thing is just like, I'm so used to it.
Hmm.
I forget that for other people, it's not a normal thing. And so even when I'm like, I get nervous because if I'm like drilling something with one of my girl wrestlers, I have to like totally back off on intensity and power because I'm like, oh yeah, I am going to be a heck of a lot stronger than a high school girl,
Yep.
even though she's been barbell training for 6 months. Because I have on and off been barbell training for, 25 years. So it's just a matter of like paying attention to what I do in relation to others.
Got it. Yeah. So, if you were to give some advice to 15-year-old Maxine about strength training, martial arts, life, career, whatever, what would you say to her?
You're enough.
Nice. Hell yeah.
I know it's like, okay, that's really short, but it's just because I never felt good enough. I never felt light enough or small enough when I was having to compete in a weight class. I was always comparing myself to guys' results, where heck, I was like, why can't I deadlift 400 pounds? And it's like, oh, well, you don't have male testosterone, so it's just, I was always the worst opponent to myself where I would literally beat myself before starting something. And it was funny because my parents were all about academics and hey, your career. And to me, those things were easy. And yet the things that were hard that I wanted to excel in athletics, I would constantly just like literally punch myself in the face, be like, you're not good enough, or this other person deserves to win. And unfortunately, that kind of festered into how I handled relationships, how I allowed other people to treat me, because I never thought I was good enough. And so I always had to be overzealous and overcompensate. And that's the thing too, where it's like with barbell training in that moment, in that day, in that rep, you're enough. You're good enough to make that rep at that weight. You don't have to go any higher. You don't have to go any lower. Like just be at peace with where you are in the journey.
Yep.
And I wish I had that advice sooner in life.
Yeah. I wouldn't have listened to it if it were me, you know? I remember, so the guy that designed the Starting Strength Logbook app, close friend of mine, he co-founded a company with me prior to doing the gym's company. He's a talented musician, creative guy, brilliant dude. He told me once, he's like, man, it seems like you've got something to prove. And I kind of took it as criticism. And it might have been critical, like he might have been pointing something out to me that he thought was a flaw in my personality. And that stuck with me for a long time. And I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? I do have something to prove. I have something to prove to myself.
Yeah.
In my mind, I think I'm capable of a lot. And I need to make sure that's true. And how do you find out if that's true? You put your neck out on the line and you see if you can pull it off. But yeah, it can be a blessing or a curse. If you're too hard on yourself, it can hold you back. If you're not hard on yourself enough, it can hold you back. So finding that balance is crucial. Those are the main things I wanted to ask you about, Maxine. Anything you want to talk about that I haven't mentioned?
I mean, I just appreciate the fact that you're so aware of the imprint that barbell training has for you currently, as well as, your child, because it's very easy to get caught up in whatever you've been raised around. And so you and I know with our generation to actually expose ourselves to barbell training was hard because we were adults in our adult life, versus teach someone early on that it's safe and effective and promising. And that's the big thing with the Starting Strength Gyms community is that, your sisters bought into the process. You have family members bought into the process. You have friends in completely different sports or activities bought into the process. And that's just one of those, again, not everyone's going to wrestle or do jujitsu or really hard, crazy combat sports, but everyone can take a dive at barbell training. They don't have to ever compete. They don't have to ever become an advanced level, lifter, but it's just, there can be such a profound forward-reaching impact made on people once they touch the barbell.
Yep. Yeah, Nick Delgadillo expressed this to me early on before I had much experience as a coach, where he said, for a lot of people, this is the hardest thing they've ever done. Yeah. I'm like, man, that's crazy, but that's true. That's our modern society, isn't it? And if you don't test yourself and then a test comes where it's do or die, that's a pretty risky situation. So learning how to grind, learning how to develop some grit. We talk about it all the time on the podcast. We provide specific examples, but you really can't overstate the importance of that. And I'm appreciative of people like you, because you're not only just a fantastic role model, but also a fantastic role model for women. This whole you need to be thin and frail and dainty and all this shit. Like, how about you become a killer? And then that's the most important part. And all the other stuff is just noise. Because, you're a capable, strong woman that can defend herself. And that's a beautiful thing. And I also just wanted to have you on, like I said, to expose your mindset to the community, and also just to show the community that all these great things I say about our gyms and the people coaching in these gyms, Maxine's a good example of what I'm talking about here. You can tell how much she cares about her members. You can tell her level of commitment and I was going to say buy-in, but buy-in from yourself and the buy-in you demand from your members. So you're kicking ass, Maxine. We appreciate you. Thanks for coming on the show today. If a gal is watching this and is like, yeah, I've been looking for a lady like Maxine, and her mindset, I think she'd be a great fit for me, or whomever, not just women, but I'm assuming that you'll appeal to them most. Are you taking on online coaching members at the moment?
I mean, I'll put it this way, because I'm not an SSC, it's like, even if SSC is a black belt, like I still have plenty of room to grow. And it's kind of one of those, I am always open to encourage and inspire and motivate people. But I mean, I'd encourage, reach out to Michael Jones, reach out to Jordan, and not just to like help them out, but it's just also be like, hey, these are people that have completely walked the process,
yeah.
And there's a lot of really competent female coaches. Ina, who really helped me get the internship at Plano, like she's a great women's coach,
Yeah.
and she's worked with women that have been pregnant as well as postpartum, so what's nice is it's not just about me. There's a whole community of women and men that are trying to empower others.
I agree with you. However, I believe there will be women that watch this sort of like, I want to talk to Maxine. So if that
They're more
happens,
than
will you
welcome
take them?
to. Sure,
Okay. So
absolutely.
plano.ssgyms.com to inquire about online coaching through you. And then, do you want to share any contact details, email or Instagram, anything like that?
You can find me on Instagram, Maxine Lisot. Just know there's a T at the end because it's silent like a ninja. If you maybe go to Michael Jones's page once in a while, he'll tag me in something like how I supposedly taught posing to the 5:30 a.m. class. It was a joke. I'm not actually into that stuff. But yeah, I mean, and honestly, it sounds creepy, but it's just like you just Google search my name. Like I have a weird, unique name. It's gonna be easy to find me,
Yeah, yeah. Maxine Lisot. Yeah, me too, unfortunately. There's me, then there's a real estate agent in Chicago, and those are the only two regular waters out
There you
there.
go. That's
Um,
awesome.
okay, awesome. Well, Maxine, if you don't mind, send Bree a bunch of footage and images from all the things you've accomplished in physical sports and whatever you want to share, and she'll litter those throughout the episode for those that want to watch it. And it'll be
Sure.
cool to see, you on the mats and you competing in karate and all the things you've done. So thanks for sharing your story, Maxine, and looking forward to seeing you at one of the next events.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
All right. See you guys. Thanks.